New video, might as well just keep it going. And I don't know, I guess the more that I post things and just say shit to a camera, the more I'm helping myself process these things. And like, maybe it's a bit self-centered, but I did realize that last night, if I just watch these videos back, then I can like see my method of processing things and maybe find fucking fallacies in my thinking and stuff. So probably everything that I do a video on, I'll do another video on later down the track when I'm experiencing a different aspect of it or have moved on. I guess I kind of talked about that last night. But anyway, this topic's about fucking loneliness, which is an interesting one, right? Because like, you've all heard the quote, like, you know, we all die alone, we're born alone or die alone or whatever, which isn't fully true. Like, you know, you're born with your mother present, which maybe is why loneliness is such a powerful emotion for people, because, you know, especially that inner child, or, you know, like the way that you've grown up. Except for people in extremely neglectful situations, most people have grown up with someone there with them all the time, which is probably why, like, say, when we're whatever age you moved out, but, you know, 19, or it just even once you start drifting from your family, even if you haven't moved out yet, I think that's why you start hanging out with your friends a lot, and you know, like, you'll hang out with your friends nearly every day. And then once you get to full adulthood, or like my age now, it starts becoming harder and harder to hang with your friends. But you're very self-sufficient, and you know how to care for yourself at that point, so you don't really need other people as much, but you still need them. And yeah, I think that's why loneliness hurts the most, is because you really need people. Like, humans are social beings, right? So without people, you feel like something's missing. But it's also interesting because I guess a human's need for other people is always, not always, like, there's other elements to it, but if you just break it down to the pure science of it, well, the reason we're so social and whatnot is usually because, well, it's easier for us to survive in groups. You know, if we were powerful enough, like say a tiger, to just roam around and just fuck up anything that got in your way, and not have to stress too much, then we probably wouldn't be very social creatures. But we can tend to be quite fragile, and you know, and fuck, humans are ambitious as shit, right? So we're like, I want to eat that fucking mammoth, but it's massive. How the fuck do you eat a mammoth? Well, just get fucking 10 boys together, you know, 20 boys together, we'll kill the mammoth. So in this day and age, it's not actually essential for your survival to have other people nearby all the time, at least in terms of your life. But you're never lonely, right? You only feel lonely because, I mean, if you walk out your door, you've probably got one or two neighbors that are going to say hello to you. If you go to the shops, you know, you're probably going to have to interact with someone in some capacity. So yeah, loneliness is weird like that, because it's not like, you could be lonely, but it's more because you're isolated, you're not alone. Loneliness is like isolation from the rest of the world. It's when you feel like it's just you against the world, and then there's everyone else, and you know, maybe they're not lonely, or there are some other lonely people, but you wouldn't fucking meet them because you're lonely, and shit like that. So I don't know what I'm trying to talk about with this, you know. Like, I mean, I guess I'm kind of feeling that at the moment, you know. I'm just trying to process it in a way that's like, well, hey, obviously people go through these feelings, like, these are just valid feelings, they're human emotion. But yeah, loneliness can suck because it feels like a very desperate situation. But it usually feels like there's no escape, because I think when you're truly lonely, it is really it's also tied in with your own self-image, or the way you approach things that might be causing you to miss, you know, certain situations or cues or things like that, because you're kind of over encumbered by that foreboding sense of loneliness, you know. So I feel like that often goes hand in hand with the depression and anxiety, which I've talked to a lot on this channel. So it'll often exacerbate it, but you don't have to be depressed or anxious to be lonely, you know. In any stage in life, someone's going to end up being lonely, you know. If you have a relationship that ends, or, you know, a friend that you were very close with that you drift apart from, or there's multitudes of things, you know, losing a family member, or there's lots of things that can make you feel lonely. And, you know, I don't really have a lot of advice for that. This is my way of dealing with loneliness, right? I'm just talking to a camera and being like, hey, you know, there's someone there. There's me. Look, he's right there. I can see him. So are you truly lonely? Well, it depends. Maybe the solution to loneliness is learning how to truly love yourself, so that when you're alone, you're with the coolest person you know, right? Which that's a very hard thing. That's something we'll be discussing on this channel until the day it's over, or the day I die, whichever one comes first. But yeah, so loneliness, even if you love yourself, you can still experience loneliness, you know. You can only get so far with yourself. So I'm not saying the solution is just love yourself, but if you're able to be alone and enjoy that time, when you don't really have a choice, then you'll be doing better than if you don't have a choice, you're alone and you're feeling real lonely, you know. So if you want an advice, here's a technique that I use when I feel alone, because if I'm feeling lonely, I just thinking about it now, I've realized I do also feel not just isolated from other people, but from myself, because we need to self-soothe, right? We need to comfort ourselves. We need to basically tell ourselves that everything is going to be okay. And when you're lonely, that's the most important skill to have, right? Because we'll often lean towards other people to tell us these things, which they often don't have the capacity to do anyway. So here's the technique that I use. What I do is, if I'm feeling lonely or particularly like shit, or like I'm isolated, I go up to the mirror and I look in the mirror, just straight into my own eyes, and then I just start talking to myself. Hey bro, how are you? I haven't seen you in a while. What are you doing? You know what I mean? And I look in my own eyes, in my reflection, for the emotions, the feelings. What am I feeling? How am I? And honestly, this is a good technique for engaging with other people as well, which I'm not very good at yet, because I'm still trying to just work through my own shit. But I would like to be employing this in day-to-day life, like, you know, looking into someone's eyes and working out, what are they saying? What are they feeling, you know? And the best way to practice is on yourself. And you'll often find that if you do that with yourself, do it earnestly, like engage with yourself earnestly, and don't engage. Imagine it's like you're talking with another person. Like, if you've got features that you're not a huge fan of, right? Like, if you're talking with someone and say they've got like a bulbous nose, you know, like one that you most definitely notice and may have thought at first, like, whoa, look at that schnoz, you know. When you're talking to that person, you're not looking at them in the eyes and going, fuck, that nose is massive. You're deliberately going to look past the flaws so that you can get to know this person. Well, hopefully, you know. Some people don't, you know, and that's fine as well. I'm not going to diss anyone's approach to life, because life is so, well, both fleeting and fucking confusing. But point is, if you've got features that you're not proud of, if you try and do this exercise and look in the mirror and you focus on all the things you don't like about yourself, this isn't going to work. But if you look in the mirror and act as though it's an engagement that you would have with just another being, as earnestly as possible, like you've just met a person and you're like, wow, this person's incredibly open and receptive. I feel like I could just speak to them naturally. That's how you want to identify yourself in the mirror. You look to yourself in the mirror and you say, how are you going, man? And then your mirror self answers. It's obviously just you, but then you have that dialogue, and then you can start breaking down some walls between yourself and your whole self. You know, the self that's up in here, and then the actual self. And sometimes you can actually flatter yourself and be like, shit, do I look that good? Sometimes, you know, or sometimes you'll be like, fuck, do I look that goofy when I smile? But again, that's why you don't focus on those things too much. You try and have a dialogue with yourself, one that's outside of an internal dialogue, because they're often not particularly healthy. We've built so many habits within our internal dialogues that are counterproductive to ourselves. So looking in the mirror and talking to yourself is an easy, and it's also an easy way for when you are feeling that loneliness, to almost trick your brain into saying, hey, you're not alone, there's another person here. Like we have pet birds, right? And a lot of time birds will like looking in mirrors, and they can't even, a lot of the time they can't distinguish that the reflection is another bird. They will lose interest eventually, usually just because that they can't actually interact with the bird in the mirror. But they usually believe it's another bird, unless the bird's quite smart. So you've got to do that to yourself. You've got to trick yourself into thinking that your reflection is just another person, just a whole another person, but you know them very well. They're an intimate person to you. In fact, they're the closest person to you. They're your best friend. And then that's what you do. You look in the mirror and you treat yourself like your best friend. And then you ask yourself, how are you doing? Are you okay? What do you need? And you answer the questions as well. And by doing that, you start to look at yourself a little bit differently, a little bit kinder, you know? Instead of being like, oh, you know, if you're prone to your head being like, oh, you're so fucking needy, blah, 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 you know? Which can help exacerbate loneliness as well, right? If you think that your needs encroach on others' existence, then you're definitely likely to put yourself in situations that make you feel lonely. But with yourself, you're already encroaching on your existence as much as is possible without you going and doing something really crazy. Like, you are the encroachment on your existence, right? So you don't need to stress about that when you're talking to your mirror self, because you know that both of you are the worst encroachment on yourselves anyway. So you can ignore all of that. You can stop stressing about that, and you can look in the mirror and say, hey, are you all good? What's going on? How can I help? And often you'll want to answer. You'll want to answer yourself if you treat yourself earnestly and if you're doing this exercise correctly. And when you answer yourself, you go, shit, okay, that's what I need. So if you could practice it every day, I fucking don't. I usually only practice it as an afterthought. When I think about it or I'm actually having a real bad time, then I'll be like, shit, I need to go to the mirror and ask myself, what's going on and what do you need from me? And yeah, that can help combat loneliness. It's not going to fix it. None of the things that I talk to on this channel are topics that have a simple fix for them. Which sucks if I'm trying to give advice, but I'm not really. Like, I'm just trying to speak to these experiences. And excuse the exposure on this video. I have no idea why. It's just my phone's cooked. I gotta get a new one, but for the moment you just get shitty channel quality with lots of exposure changes, and yeah. But so yeah, loneliness, it sucks. But given that you're always sharing your existence with yourself, you're never truly alone. But also you can't just get by yourself, right? If you're a social person. Some people can. And that's what I was saying earlier. Like, it's not essential for you to have friends or a group or some belonging, you know. And a particularly introverted person probably may not want to pursue that at all. But I'm a very social person, so loneliness often is one of the heavier emotions that I feel, because it basically means to me that one of my needs isn't being met, which is to be able to be social and, you know, have a group, have some belonging, have someone to bounce ideas off, you know. So yeah, I don't know if I have any more thoughts on it. I do, but it's just a lot, you know, especially if you are feeling lonely currently, which I am a bit. Yeah, I don't really know how to speak to those bits, you know. I'd like these videos to be like, oh, right now I'm just gonna fucking open up and be hella deep. But I'm not there yet, you know what I mean? This is me practicing to get there, to get to that point in my life. So, you know, with loneliness, I think we just need to develop tools to combat it as much as possible, and do all the work to fight the other things that exacerbate it, like the depression or the anxiety and stuff. And then when loneliness does come, embrace it. Embrace it. Because that might just mean that you need to get comfortable with yourself. And if you're desperately just needing to not be alone, then when you are, your life's gonna suck. It's gonna suck. Even if it's just temporary. Even if it's just for today, you don't have any friends because they're all busy, or your family can't reach out to you, or whatever it is. You know, maybe you need that. Maybe you need to be alone for a little bit and just work it out. Anyway, just some musings.